cars feel with the lower tire pressure?
Feels better on the low speed, but not as good on the high speed.
Okay, so we'll leave them where they are.
Yeah.
Just leave them where they are.
Although, the only thing I'm curious, is there a pressure difference between left and right? There.
Alright, whenever you want to go out, you put your snap to the
muted myself. Welcome, guys. That's enough of that. And we're going to have some fun today. It is me versus Econoboi coming up soon. Just waiting on the link. I'm not really sure how this is going to play out. I don't know. I think we're going to probably do that weird StreamYard or Discord thing. We'll find out. It's going to be lit, y'all. It's going to be lit. Yeah, recenter myself here. There we go. Yeah, there we go. All right. Yeah, it was a long time ago before they paved that. I think that was 2012, I think. 2013, something like that. So, yep. Yep. I don't know if they're stopping Pikes Peak. So last I heard, it's still going on. All they did was pave it all. You know, now it's going to kill somebody. I mean, before the dirt kind of acted as like a slowdown, like a fuse, but oof. Yeah. Yeah, it's gonna. I mean, they've had so many cars go off. It's crazy. At any rate, like I said, I'm just waiting on the link. Matter of fact, I'm going to go over and I am going to annoy the. Going to go annoy Admiral Gibbs. Now, Admiral Gibbs is the guy put this debate together. He's going to be the moderator and I think the tie-breaking judge. The other judges are Pentuple, who's a conservative lawyer guy from like Maryland, super cool dude, and Enemy Charlie. Enemy Charlie is a communist chick. You know, she's nice enough, but you got to remember she's a communist. Just always remember that. Keep in mind. And and so that's it's going to be a good punching match. I think we'll see. Now, the last time I was supposed to debate, I believe it was Econoboi, last minute canceled, and we subbed in. The fuck's that dude's name? Guy wears a beanie hat. The fuck's that guy's name? It doesn't matter. Oh, Soy Pill. Yeah, Soy Pill. Yeah. So they subbed in Soy Pill. Really didn't get much out of that, and I ended up having to go early myself. So, yeah. So hopefully this time we actually get a debate in place. We'll see. Maybe not. I don't know. I'm going to harass Gibbs though if he doesn't hurry up and fucking give me that link so I can get in and get my sound set up and everything else. Should be good to go on the sound. We'll see. We'll find out. So yeah, the squirrely looking dude. Yeah. So we've got a lot of stuff going on today. Just waiting. That's all. That's all I'm doing. It's going to be good though. I've really got to find, and I think I've got one. I'm not really super happy with my argument against the Scandinavian system of socialism. Although I think at the end, I think the end result is that you can't have the Scandinavian socialism without achieving the Venezuelan result. I just think that that's just how that happens. So, and that's just the way it's going to work out. I think that's where we're going to go with it. I think that's my tactic because I'm pretty sure that's going to be a thing today. Other than that, it's going to be pretty good. We're gonna knock it down. Yeah, Nordic model socialism. You can't have Nordic model socialism with Venezuelan economics or market or growth, and eventually, if you try that, you end up with Venezuela. It's just the way it is. It's the way it goes. Plus, every single time that we try this kind of mixed system in non-homogeneous cultures, what we end up with is a fucking mess. And they try it all the time in Africa, and it always fucks up. So, that's just the way of it. I think we're going to end up, we're probably going to talk about caste systems a lot, hierarchies. Ryan Lopez, you disagree because if you have a homogenous country of white people who all believe what you do, how does that work? I'm not really sure what you're trying to get at there, but the simple thing is the reason that the Denmark system works is because mostly Finland uses this system, and they have a lot of oil, and they're able to bear the burden of the taxes on of the oil. And it is an exceedingly homogenous culture, as you point out. And so it's going to be, again, you can't, I don't think you can start with a Nordic style socialism without ending up in Venezuela unless you have those two things. It needs to be, you have to have a very homogenous society, and you have to have massive amounts of income to offset the mass amount of taxes. And the reality is that, and I kind of need to look into this a little bit more, but I don't think it's going to come up. The reality is, I think that even if you have even if you try and have this socialist weirdness like Denmark works because a lot of people don't own cars, and they don't want to own cars, right? Cars are very expensive there, and why would you want one? So public transportation is exactly that the public transportation there is exactly not exactly why, but it is a big part of the reason why it works. And it's just, it's just a bad example. I don't know that he's going to use it. I think he understands that it's a bad example, but we will see. SDS guy, I'm going to try and stay away from Orange Man, but we'll see who brings it up, and we'll take that accordingly. So yeah, we're trying to get this going on. I'm waiting for the links. We are almost at game time. We have 20 minutes till game time. I like to be early. I don't know why we have issues. Vikings don't have oil. Yeah, I think it's actually Finland that has the oil, but I brand all those countries, the Netherlands, and therefore the Nordic region. So yeah. But yeah, it's going to be interesting. It's going to be an interesting conversation. I really feel like that. I really feel like this is where we're going to go. Right. I think so. I think also aren't the. I mean, even though they're, and even the Nordic countries will say that they're not socialist at all, and most of them are some weird form of monarchy with a constitutional monarchy kind of thing, where they have like a parliament or something of that nature. I need to look that up. It's been a long time since I actually studied the Netherlands various forms of government. Yeah. Stiff today. I was gonna get a nap. I tried to, but I couldn't sleep. So lit it up early. I think so. Ghost Knight. 1978, but I don't have any. I don't have a reference for that. If you have one, I would like to see that. Welcome back, Cursed Zero. Welcome back, and guys, we'll go live as soon as they send me the link. We'll be up, and it'll be cool. Until then, you're just gonna have to deal with me just kind of bouncing off the walls here while I try and organize my notes. And try and get this. Yeah, and I think I think it's gonna be good. I think it's gonna be real good. Need to do some reading here for a minute. Not much, just a little bit. See, the thing is that when we start talking about this, obviously we're not talking about pure systems, right? Like I will, and I'm really going to grant that there are some social programs that I would endorse. I just don't endorse those social programs being funded by the government, right? Like I don't agree with Medicare. I don't agree with the VA. Well, I kind of agree with the VA hospital, but that's that's kind of a separate issue. And I even have something on that. I don't agree with Social Security. I think Social Security is a monstrosity. I think it's really bad. Um, The and I think we need to get the government all of that. Yeah. Did he have some stuff to help me sleep? No thanks. Yeah, this is an interesting topic as well. The South African refugees, the Boers coming up. Yeah, that's true. The Boers. Yeah, well, they're discriminated against down there. So, I mean, it's interesting that we let people who are not discriminated into the country into the country, and people that actually are discriminated against. We don't want to have them in the country. So, all right, where's there? Dang it, boy, we are going to use gosh darn Discord. All right, guys, here we go. You have to solve all the technical difficulties. Where the fuck is his? There it is. All right. I'm in the waiting room. I'm going to mute myself. All right, I'm muted. I think. All right, guys. Sorry, I was jumping into the waiting room. See how this goes. What's up, my man? What's new? Now, I need a great nap. I didn't get one, but I need one. Um, Gnat. The gnats are terrible, man. Are we, why can I not see myself in this room? Am I in the wrong room? What? There we go. I got you. I got you. Never mind. I figured it out. Yeah. Sounds like it. Sounds like it. Okay. All right. Well, hopefully we're getting good sound out of this. I always have sound problems with Discord. I can't believe you guys still use this nonsense, but it is what it
You
is.
sound fantastic. Also, did you know that Skype directly quoted Discord as the reason why they went out of business?
Really? I thought it was just the fact that cell phones no
Yeah,
longer
they said that.
cared, or cell phone carriers no longer cared about the
No, they said that part of the reason was is like other companies such as Discord having more features and better ease of access for like in the entry for people was like carrying their business. Then they also like cited like Zoom and whatever. I'm like, Zoom? Didn't Zoom get bought?
I think Zoom did actually get bought. I
Yeah,
think
so
that's
it's
a real thing.
kind of weird.
Yeah, I think that's a real thing. So what this is such a really weird topic. Like it's so broad. You couldn't come up with
Yeah,
anything else.
I could have, but you know, I don't know if you noticed. I like these broad topics because then you can
Because you like
go a lot
broads.
of different directions. Yeah, I do like broads. I like to go a lot of different direction with them. You know, like you never know if it gets like boring or something. Like or like you can switch over to like a different like avenue of
Mm.
attack for the topic, or I can move it along the lines. Like, well, so like this one, like you like capitalism work here, but what about in Germany? Whatever inflation, or then you can be like socialism work except here, you know, like kind of thing. It's kind
It's
of
going
like
to
all
be such a. I mean, I don't know because it's such a broad topic that I've just been guessing at what Econoboi is even going to say. I'm like, what the fuck ever.
you could have probably watched his debate against Fabian on the same topic,
Oh, really?
and
I
then
didn't. I didn't
maybe you would
find the
have had
one
some
on
notes.
against Fabian. I found the one against Rob Noor and the one against Andrew Wilson.
Well, that's why I told you to go look up the Fabian.
No, I
I was
sorry, I
like,
didn't pay
"There's this
attention
one."
to
You're
you.
like, he was like, "Nah, we're not gonna do that. Fuck
Yeah,
you."
sorry, I didn't pay attention to you.
You giving him the secrets, the keys to the kingdom. He's like, "Nah, I don't want it."
Yeah, I'll figure it out. Well, so the thing is that I debate completely different than Fabian. Fabian is like
Oh,
he
yeah,
will
for
go
sure.
super meta. Like I fully expect Econoboy to go like so meta, like meta upon meta upon meta.
Yeah,
But
I mean, and that's kind of what's interesting here is like a part of what I've been doing with this DCS thing is trying to match like styles that are pretty different. So like Econoboy meta, you're gonna be like I don't know what you're gonna do, but like I was assuming yours is more like real world experience. And so you're gonna talk about like the nuts and bolts is what I would have thought like about like you know day to day. And so it's interesting to see how you do the like the oppositions. Like I had like Modi debate somebody on one of these, and he's like doesn't know anything about politics, but we were debating about something else. And it's like the like insult blood sports type versus like the real nerdy type, and we've had a couple of these different types where they go. It's pretty interesting.
yeah, see, I think that watching Fabian debate Econoboy is probably cool, but you know, like
How much
and
practical you can
again,
do it.
I can't take it. I mean, it's not that I can't. I make it like super meta. So, what's up, Econoboy?
Yeah,
We're just talking about you.
all terrible. He's me dead effing. You can't even hear us. But
Go,
someone can hear us
go.
though.
Yes, I can.
Oh, there we go.
Oh, did I move my thing? There we go. I like the shirt. The Rooster versus Peter Griffin. It's classic.
That is awesome. That's actually really cool.
We're just waiting on Charlie. She said she'll be here in a second.
Is she fixing her hair? Because that could take 30 minutes.
Nah, I'm
Okay.
sure she'll be fine. I have faith.
Yeah. No, okay.
Oh no, my OBS is fucked.
Boy, gonna see though. How you doing, Vince? Leaving early tonight, huh?
Good, yes. Yes, I am.
Send one of your little minions to
too
replace
much.
you.
I literally think I'm just gonna go sit outside. I just need to go sit outside. I've been working my 9 to 5 and sitting in the studio all week. I'm just like, I need to go sit outside or something.
Take a
Gotta get some,
walk,
like,
man.
chlorophyll.
Away from these screens. Yeah, I just gotta get away from these fucking screens.
Yeah, I feel that. That happens.
Yeah. I searched on X. I searched retard from my account, and I was like, "Yeah, I need a break." It's like 50 in like the last week. I'm like, God damn, I'm fucking on here arguing with everybody. Oh shit!
Dude, internet brain, bro. That'll get you.
For real, for real.
Do you like
those-
specific days off that you just don't stream at all?
Yeah.
Yeah, anybody. I don't care. Global.
I
I
definitely
mean,
do.
I take some days off here and there, but I stream a lot, and I've gone a lot of days streaming. Mostly it's like Saturdays. Usually I'll take off or something.
Are you streaming now?
Yeah, I'm live now. It cut out because my OBS fucked up.
I'll send you an invite.
Yeah, my PC's been bugging out and everything. I'm losing.
Are you
everything.
streaming on Twitch, Econoboi?
No. I guess I could have been streaming, but I don't know. I didn't think to turn the stream on. So.
Oh, that's fine. I was just asking for the stream together if you want to get it on. All right. That's it. Good.
Oh my god, it crashed again. Oh, just kidding. It's back.
So I don't stream at all Sundays or Tuesdays.
Yeah, I like to take Sundays off.
Yeah.
Like I might go on like Coach Kurtz if he does his thing on Sundays because that's pretty fun. But like I like to take my Sundays off.
Yeah.
Tuesdays are like a really slow day in general, so I usually take Tuesdays off too. I feel like from at least from doing anything planned.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it's just a matter of by Sunday I've streamed like 3, maybe sometimes 4 days in a row, and I'm just like, I'm cooked, man. I'm done. Like, I don't want to do it anymore.
Ranger Rose says, Econoboi, good job on Timcast. I disagree with everything you said, but you looked and sounded great.
Thank you. That's a best case scenario from the
Ranger,
Timcast
yeah.
viewer.
Yeah, I didn't think you would agree with too much of what you were going to say. To be fair, you did go against Connor, so that's like a free win. So I had faith in you.
Yeah, I had Tim and Connor both kind of debating me, but I don't know. I didn't really. I don't. I mean, you probably won't be surprised to hear that I don't find the conservative arguments on welfare to be very. There's not many great ones. So.
Well, I mean, to be fair, you didn't hear any on that show, so.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I've debated Fabian Liberty and I don't know, like many libertarians before, and I don't know. I think the best argument from a libertarian perspective is like, well, the most sound argument I would say about the welfare state from a libertarian is like, just who cares what happens to poor people, right? And that's an actually interesting moral debate, but it's a very difficult empirical debate to have.
I actually agree with you on that. Like, this is kind of one of my problems when, like, I see like a lot of the libertarians in this space representing like the conservative side for a lot of these is not necessarily because I disagree with like some of their stuff, because like I like the like whole no taxes thing as much as the next guy, but like it's just not practical, like in like any real sense. Like, we don't live in this society, like, where this is happening. You're making arguments from, like a purely meta, like, theoretical kind of standpoint. Like, okay, can we talk about what's really happening and why it's bad, or what, you know what I'm saying? I don't know. I feel like that's the problem I have when I talk to a lot of libertarians in this space, and they're representing the, like, conservative side on panels.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. I mean, to be fair, I guess Connor tried to represent that kind of more pragmatic small government view, but again, I find that to be harder to argue than the more pure libertarian perspective. Because once you open the door to some, it's like I'm okay with like some government benefits because I think they have a good impact. It's like, well, you probably should just be okay with all of them then, you know, for just the evidence seems pretty strong, but I don't know.
Well, I'm sure we'll get into that some today. Just wait on Charlie here, guys. She is here. Perfect. Like speak of the devil, may appear.
Hello.
Howdy, howdy.
Hey, his computer works.
Hey, there we go. And we're all in time for the great. Well, that's what I like to see. All right, I'll just go over this real quick. Pentuples is the only one who's judged one of these before, done any of these. So this is how it works for everybody. We're gonna do. We have like 7-minute intros, like max. You don't have to go over that. I got a timer thing. Then we're gonna have I'll let it go to free discussion where y'all go back and forth against each other. If y'all can't decide who goes first, I'll do a coin flip. Whoever goes first, will go last at the for closings. After about 15 minutes, 20 minutes or so, we're going to give the judges an opportunity to ask each of y'all questions directly for about like 10 minutes or so. Then we'll let it go back to y'all for doing free debate kind of thing. Then we'll have another for about 10, 15 minutes. Then we'll have the judges once again ask y'all the questions again, and then like kind of just engage with y'all. And then I'll close it out. Y'all get like another like 5 to 10 minute kind of like free discussion. And then we'll have like 3-minute closings. And then what's going to happen is the judges are going to, DM me who they think won. And then we're going to have a chat vote as well. And then at the end, we'll announce who won, and then the judge will tell y'all each who won and then why they voted for you. And as a judge, I try to always get a right and a left-leaning judge, but try to be impartial, just vote on who did better. That's kind of what we're doing here. But all right, so we'll get started. Welcome to the DCS. We have a cool matchup today. We have Econoboi versus Grid, and we're going to be discussing socialism versus capitalism. But first, I'm going to let everybody get an intro and tell who you are and what they do. We'll start with Charlie.
Hi, I am Enemy Charlie. I stream on Twitch. Today I will be a judge. My politics are very, very, very left. However, I'm going to do my best to judge solely on the basis of quality of argument, as opposed to what I, actually agree with. And thank you for having me.
Fantastic. Thanks for being here. Econoboi.
Hey everyone, I'm Econoboi. I tend to focus on economics, but I also talk about politics a lot on Live and Learn. Econoboi and everything for this debate. I guess historically I defended capitalism mostly because I was only exposed to the bad socialist arguments, but then I discovered the good socialist arguments, and I've made a pretty radical transition, at least over the last couple of years. I've always been kind of more left-leaning, but I think I've fully dipped my toe into socialism, so it'll be fun to talk about that with Mr. Motorsports here.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Speaking of Mr. Motorsports, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm a Grid One Motorsports. I have the channel and Unreasonable Man. I stream mostly on YouTube. I do have a Twitch, but I didn't think to set it up, so you'll not see it there. I am a capitalist. That's it.
Fantastic. That's what we like to hear.
Lovely.
And the Pentuple.
Hello, I'm Pentuple. I'm the host of Vaga Headquarters. We also, I'm the commissioner of the official Twitch Poker League, and we stream baseball games also. So that's what we do over here. And today I'm judging with Enemy Charlie.
All right, fantastic. Let me just pull this up here. All right, does anybody want to go first? Or do I need to do a coin flip?
Coin flip,
Okay.
who cares?
Yeah.
All right, we'll do the heads or tails thing real quick. And okay, go ahead. Billy, I'll say one of the things in the head or tails?
Heads.
All right, it's heads. You want to go first, or you want to defer?
What's the time for the opening statement?
7 minutes max.
7 minutes. I'll go second.
All right.
Okay.
All right, Grid. Let me just pull up my timer real quick, and I'll tell you when to go. All right. Go ahead.
All right. This won't take long in my standard fashion. It will be short, quick, and to the point. I'm a capitalist. I believe in capitalism. It is in no way, shape, or form anything else except capitalism for me. I believe in some community funded social projects, but not governmental. No, I'm a non-interference. I don't believe in government interference, and which does not make me a libertarian. Sorry. And basically, socialism can't exist without capitalism, and we're going to have a lot of fun in this debate. I know we will, and that's it. That's the end of it, and my opponent can go.
All right. We now have a new record for fastest opening. Very excited about that. Econoboi, go ahead. Let me just reset this, and you're good to go.
Sure. I guess I'll probably take a larger percentage of my opening statement than Grid Motorsports did. So I guess to kind of frame the debate out, I think that the best way to think about socialism is pretty narrowly. I think that socialism is when the means of production are collectively owned. Now, some people will add in other things. They'll say you have to decommodify labor, you have to have decommodification in general, you have to have democratic centralism if you're like a Marxist-Leninist or something like that. But I tend to take a pretty classical, pretty narrow view of socialism. Socialism is when production, meaning essentially businesses and capital assets, things like that, are owned collectively. And by collectively, that could mean many assorted things, right? That could mean that the workers own it. That could mean that the consumers own it. That could mean that the democratic state owns it and the people kind of control it democratically that way. There's a number of different models for social and collective or worker ownership, but that's generally speaking what socialism is. And I think that as well, it's also important to think about socialism at the institutional level. This has just been the most sensible way to think about socialism in my experience. That, look, a lot of people quibble, is this a socialist country? Is that a socialist country? Is this a socialist economy? Is that a socialist economy? I think that's a pretty unproductive way to talk about socialism. I found it unproductive when I was doing it for years until this was clarified for me later down the line. I think you have to think about these things at the institutional level. So what do I exactly mean by that? I don't think it's as productive to talk about this country is good and it's capitalist, this country is bad and it's socialist. I think it's much more interesting to think about what are the institutional designs of these economies, because every economy is complex. Every economy is essentially a mixed economy. And when we think about certain things in even the American economy, right, if we were to think about public schools, for instance, public schools are publicly owned enterprises, essentially. It's a publicly owned government service. And now that might sound weird to think about public schools as a form of socialist institution, but just think about it like this. We could have privately owned, for-profit, market-distributed schools. We could have that. We don't, right? We decommodify schooling, essentially, and we publicly own and control it, and we democratically manage it at the local level, right? That is certainly a socialist institution. Same thing with the fire department. You know, we could have private firehouses and market-distributed for-profit firehouses. We don't. We choose to make that a public service that's democratically owned and accountable. Same thing with the police in America. Now, some countries, I would argue accurately, they tend to go a little bit further. Look at Norway. They tend to have state-owned enterprises for all sorts of things, right? You know, state-owned oil companies, state-owned health services companies, very state-owned arts and sort of theater companies, things like that. I think that's a pretty good model for a number of reasons. Number one, I think that we can say, strictly speaking, you would always prefer collective ownership to private ownership, assuming the same outcomes, right? Now, assuming that you could have the same level of innovation, the same level of sort of growth in the economy, why wouldn't you want ownership to be more horizontally distributed? I don't see an intrinsic reason to prefer that a private capitalist gets profits instead of the society at large, if it is the case that we have the same level or greater levels of innovation and growth in the economy. So it seems like, strictly speaking, you would prefer collective ownership. That is, if you can prove, at least, that we could expect the same levels of innovation and growth. And I think as well, state-owned enterprises and public services, to the extent that there's externalities of these kinds of types of production, those organizations do a better job of internalizing those externalities. So, for instance, we could have a situation where pollution's out of control, so we want to tax pollution to sort of internalize that cost into every individual firm. That's not necessarily a bad thing, and you can do that with state ownership. But, for instance, if we had a state-owned oil company, we, the people, could just create a regulation for that organization and say, yeah, just like don't pollute a shitload of pollution into the air. We can't necessarily do that as easily with private corporations because those corporations are antagonistic to public interest. They are not directly in line with public interest. So I think that's something important to keep in mind as well. Lastly, I'll talk about my journey and how I kind of started to fall into the general socialist label. I was researching egalitarianism, actually. I was been a sort of egalitarian in my viewpoint. I think people should be equal. It's like, what dimension should they be equal in? And I was researching all this stuff and, pretty committed egalitarian. At some point when I was doing my reading, somebody said, or maybe I read somewhere, that, look, if egalitarianism is one of your values, the only way to actually achieve equality is with a socialist economic system. And I thought about that for a minute, and I said, that actually does make a lot of sense. That if you think about what capitalism is, right, taking production and allowing it to be privately owned and looking at the fruits thereof, there's a lot of innovations, there's a lot of growth associated with it. But because of capitalism, 2 minutes, because of capitalism, our society is also highly unequal. Now, of course, there's a debate about how unequal society should be, and like I said, what dimension society should be unequal. And you might even argue that, hey, given a perfect institutional framework, we can't socialize the entirety of the economy. We can't make every economic system one of those socialist institutions that I referenced earlier because of practical concerns, to which point I would say, I agree with you. But that's not a statement on whether or not it is a good general goal to move in that direction insofar as it is possible and insofar as we can dream big in that regard. And to respond, I guess, briefly to some of the things that Grid Motorsports said in my last minute, he talked about how, I'm a capitalist, I don't believe in government interference. Well, you absolutely have to have government interference in a capitalist system because who's enforcing the property rights? Well, guess what? It's the government, right? It's the police force, right? You have to have government in order to maintain markets, in order to maintain property rights, which of course underpins both capitalist and socialist modes of production. He also says socialism cannot exist without capitalism. To some, I guess it depends on what he means by that. Maybe we'll get into it. But overall, I think that we should think about socialism as transitioning those privately owned institutions into publicly, collectively owned institutions in one way or another, like public utilities, public schools, state-owned enterprises, sovereign wealth fund ownership, things like that. I think those are the institutions that best reflect, sort of the ideal economic system. And hopefully we'll get into that at the, middle part of the debate that we're about to start.
All right, fantastic. Thank you so much. Now, before I turn it over to y'all, just one quick note for the audience and for the new people. I'm just here to mod. Basically, I'll ask a question every now and then for clarification or maybe press somebody and see what they say after that. But I'm going to try to do it to both of them as needed, just for the quality of discussion. But go ahead, talk amongst yourself. Fight.
Thank you. That was I wasn't really aware that you were a communist, but okay, we can go with that. So I have to ask, do you honestly believe that there are no private schools in the United States of America? Because my kid goes to one.
That's not what I said.
That is what you said. You said that we've gotten rid of them. That's exactly what you said.
No, that's not what I said.
What did you say?
Judges, I guess, feel free to
Well,
note.
repeat
Can I
that.
clarify?
What
I was taking notes. What Econoboi said was that public education
Why are you
is
answering
an
instead
example
of
of a.
Econoboi?
Yeah, Charlie, pipe down, all right?
Oh,
God damn
my
it, Grid
bad. I
asked me
thought I
a
was supposed to
question.
be providing clarification. I
No,
was
no,
taking notes. I'm sorry. I thought
No,
he asked
I was
me
just
to-
kidding. I'm just kidding. Grid might be more
Okay,
serious.
my
I mean,
bad. My
Yeah, I'm
bad.
sorry. I didn't realize that I was debating two people.
Well, it's
Yeah,
okay.
No,
We
no,
can always
you're
check
not
the
debating
VAR.
me. I was clarifying what he said.
He
pumping
can clarify what he
That's
said.
all right.
It's his job to
Okay,
clarify what
my
he
bad.
said.
I'm sorry. He said the
That's
judges. Can the judges
We
I
can
don't-
collectively.
Yeah, I was
own
gonna
the
say I have some stuff, but I guess we'll
clarification.
just wait
Okay,
till
come
it gets.
on.
Yeah,
to
usually,
my
all right.
God.
Just to clarify, I'll clarify real quick.
We already got communism in the judging.
No, it's fine. No, it's all she was doing was. I also think you might have been mistaken with how you interpreted what he said. But
God damn it, Gibbs.
and I'll let him
He's
clarify.
only supposed to be debating me, Gibbs,
All
not
right,
you
no.
and me.
No, I'm saying sure. That's fair.
I
But,
also
just
think-
to
I'm
clarify, I'm going to give a specific period for the judges here in about 10 minutes or so, and then y'all can say stuff and whatever, and you'll be able to like ask and clarify
Yeah.
and say whatever.
Mhm.
That way, they don't think there's any collusion among contestants here. These are
Yeah, I
wonderful
mean,
people.
just
But
just
yeah,
to
I think that was
answer,
a pretty benign accident there.
yeah, I
Going
mean,
forward.
Well, I was
just to
Sorry, Charlie.
answer,
All right, my
It's
bad.
no,
yeah,
it's not
just to
totally
answer,
fine, Charlie. Go ahead.
yeah,
Jesus.
just to answer GM's question. I mean, obviously we have private schools, but about 90% of kids go to public school in this country, and so we could have 100% go to private school, but we instead choose for almost every kid to go to publicly owned, democratically managed schools.
I mean, but that's not what you said. And I was
Well, that
clarifying that
is
that's
what I
not the
said. I mean,
actual case.
let's move on
I,
because
for
we
example, I
disagree on my most
okay,
recent 7 minutes. But
I
what's your point that you're making?
for example, I choose to send my son to a private school because public schools in this country have failed because of the very silly, I guess, structures that you would say, maybe. I don't know how you would express it, but basically because of all of the involvement of the government. My state, for example, refused federal money this year because of the strings it came attached with. So I'm very interested if you believe that all of the, and by the way, I have a volunteer fire department. We don't have we I mean, I understand that you, in your global sense, this is the way things are, but I live in real America, and I don't see the communism and socialism that you do. Maybe I should open my eyes more.
I can explain.
And so I'm going to challenge. I'm going to push back on this idea that we have all of this socialism in place. I don't think that public works in and of itself is particularly socialist, although I would actually prefer for most of it to be privatized. I think that private industry almost always is more efficient and better run than state-run systems. As a matter of fact, I would love to challenge you right now, just because I'm not prepared for it. That name me one system that that has proven to be more effective when it's run by the government than private industry.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think there's a lot of them. Number one, let's answer your original point that you made.
Sure.
Oh, I just don't see all this socialism around me. I mean, I'd suggest that you open your eyes to all the socialism that you are surrounded by. Now, some of those institutions, like I've already mentioned, 90% of kids in this country are educated by publicly owned, democratically operated public schools. That's 90% of children. Even if you go all the way up to the top 1%, even the wealthiest people in this country, about 85% of them send their kids to public schools. They don't send their kids to private schools. So that's important to keep in mind. Every single county and city, for the most part, has their own police department. They do not have private security that they could pay. We have private security. You could always do that if you were a city. Instead, they decide to democratically manage and operate a police force, right? They provide the service of security. You could pay for that service on an open market. We instead decide to operate that democratically for one reason or another. Same with the fire department. I mean, the military, for instance, you could have a privately owned and operated military. We could force people to buy war insurance, but we just don't do that. We have essentially a state-run, state-employed backed military. I think that we should have a lot more of those institutions. Some of those institutions that I already mentioned answers your second question, which is, well, name an example where those institutions that are publicly owned do better than when they were privately owned. Well, the fire department is a great example of that. We used to have no public fire department, and every society at one point had no publicly funded fire department. And what they found was they had huge inequalities in who was actually able to receive help, and we had huge coordination problems with actually responding to the threats of fires because not every house was covered by the sort of archaic schemes of the time. So we decided to essentially decommodify that. We brought that into public ownership, and now anybody, no matter how rich or poor, if there's
Ryan,
a fire
if
started
you,
at their house, can
talk about
call
blowing somebody's
911
nose again,
and have
we're
a
gonna have to
team
get
of
rid of
trained firefighters come to their house, and that's publicly paid for and operates quite well.
Can I ask you a quick question before I'll let Grid respond?
Excuse me, Grid. Is this the official judge question time?
No,
Admiral Gibbs?
this is the Gibbs's question time. I just wanted you to
Unbelievable.
clarify. Yeah, unbelievable. I just want you to clarify. So are you saying all the things paid for by tax dollars and provided by the government would be essentially socialist? Is that kind of how you're defining socialism?
No, because I'm
Or-
talking
hold
about
on.
the things that public entities produce, right? That are publicly
Okay.
owned. That would be a socialist institution. So, for instance, if I take Social Security as an example, That's just taxing workers and paying non-workers in the case of the retired. You're not producing anything. You're just transferring money from some people to another people. But when it comes to the fire service or the police service or public schools, they're producing things. They're producing education, security, fire defense. When it comes to state-owned enterprises like the USPS or Amtrak, they're producing things like, delivery of parcels. They're producing things like public transit for people to ride on. The Tennessee Valley Authority, that's a publicly owned electricity, essentially utility company. They're producing electricity for people to consume. That's what I'm talking about when I'm talking about social.
I just wanted to clarify. Go ahead, Grid.
Yeah. So I'm glad he got clarified. So the police. I'll grant you police and fire. Okay, I don't know. I like my volunteer fire department. I think they're great. But let's talk about what you just talked about, these public works and all of that. So in my state, I don't think there's there's only one or two state-owned power companies. They're almost all privatized now. Why is that?
Well, when it comes to production decisions, I mean, there's many different political factors that come at play. For instance, if you go to a lot of rural communities, they have consumer cooperative electricity companies. They decided that it's better for the community to own something like that at large. Now, that's an example of a non-state form of socialist ownership, right? But again, that's the community at large owning something like that and not necessarily private investors.
Do you know who Xcel Energy is?
I've heard of them. Yeah.
Okay. It's one of the largest energy providers. If you live in Texas, Colorado, Upper New Mexico, a bunch of different states, Nebraska, I think, Kansas. Xcel Energy because they provide your energy, and they are not state-owned at all.
Right.
It's a private company.
Well, I mean, again, so motorsports, my argument is not that you can't have private ownership or that private ownership is always a disaster when it happens. My only argument is that I think that public institutions and public ownerships tends to be better than private ownership, right? So for instance,
you got to define better here, because my observation is that every time we take something that the state runs away from the state and privatize it, it gets better. It gets more efficient. It gets cleaner. Everything is better because government is wasteful. We know that. We're literally investigating fraud, abuse, and waste right now. So I'm very curious. Please define for me what's better. I'm lost because you keep saying something, but I don't believe it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's not my problem if you just don't believe what I'm saying. I mean, I mentioned in my opening statement.
But we are debating.
I mentioned in my opening statement. But I mentioned in my opening statement that there were two reasons to sort of strictly prefer collective ownership. One was that when profits are horizontally distributed, I think there's a strict intuitive reason to prefer that over when profits are privately distributed, assuming we get the same levels of growth and innovation. So that's one reason. Another reason is just strictly for egalitarian purposes that, hey, it seems like it's important for people to be equal. Equalizing ownership is one of those things. And I also mentioned internalizing externalities, right? You can do that a little bit more efficiently if you have state ownership or public ownership in a broad sense than if you have this sort of distributed private ownership. I mean, you mentioned utilities specifically. In Texas, for instance, when we deregulated utilities and we allowed all of this, like, quote unquote, competition to come into the utility space, what we found was not actually that customers had a huge increase in their satisfaction from the people who are turning their meter on, right? I mean, this isn't exactly a very robust service that they're providing. What we did find, however, was that rates just went up, right? We saw all of a sudden people were paying for profits for big electricity providers, and that's something that I guess people can either love or hate. I mean, people have their different preferences for how things should be organized, but I would make the argument that, as with many other states and many other people, they get their electricity from publicly owned entities, or at the very least, highly publicly accountable entities.
You say that the price went up. Oh, sorry, Gibbs.
Oh yeah, just real quick. Yeah, go ahead with what you're saying. But I also would like you to include, like, how are you defining better? Because we've heard how he's defining. How are you? Yeah. Because you asked.
I was pretty clear.
Okay,
I was pretty clear. Costs us less, cleaner, generically, better run, more efficient. Like, look, okay. I think that's better. I don't know if that's better to my opposition.
That's fine. Yeah, but go ahead with what you're saying.
So that's why I needed him to clarify better, and he hasn't really clarified better. He just said a lot of things. Well, and just one of the things that's very interesting, because your electric bill goes up, you immediately, and just with no proof or anything, said that it's just because they wanted profit. Obviously, they wanted profit. Maybe the cost did go up. Maybe I don't know. But that was the first place you went. So it's very interesting I have not been on a state electrical system, state-owned electrical system since I was in California, and I don't even think it's state-owned anymore. But so I don't know. But I'm pretty sure the last time, the reason that they hiked power was because of some regulation across the board in the government. And so rather than the government owning it, rather than the government who owns it absorbing the cost of the regulation they imposed, we, the taxpayers and people who should own it anyway, actually got to pay more for it. So I'm very interested in how you make this leap.
Well, I mean, think about it, Grid Motorsports. So you use the example of Excel Energy, right? So socialism is obviously when the ownership of that business would be either privately or collectively owned. Think about share ownership and the way that it's distributed. I mean, share ownership is, in some sense, is a way of collectivizing a firm, right? You have all these different shareholders that own a corporation. They're just private shareholders and not the public at large. If the government were to come in and purchase a majority of the stock of Excel Energy, there's not really a strong reason to believe that under an ideal institutional framework that the operations of that business would be radically different than they are now. Again, I just say, hey, on the margin, they could probably internalize some externalities, and then the profits are collectively distributed and not privately distributed. And that's what we see in all these other, sort of institutionally very sound countries that have these forms of collective ownership. I mean, I mentioned Norway as probably the best example. Norway is probably the best example.
Okay. What about China?
What about China?
China's a communist country. It illustrates all of your ideals and actually has
It doesn't.
It doesn't.
Let me.
Why not? Hold on. No. Wait.
You weren't paying attention, but I can explain. So the way that China doesn't represent all of my values is that I said, hey, when it comes to democratically owning capital or democratically running public schools, for instance, there's the whole democracy thing that's really important, right? So China is not a democracy. I don't think that a cabal of inter-party elites owning a bunch of companies is the same thing as genuine social ownership. That's why I mentioned Norway and not China. If you don't want to talk about Norway because you're not
Norway is fine.
Informed on it, that's all right. Let's talk about Norway then.
Norway's fine. I just wonder why that you avoided mentioning China, which is the most obvious, which is
because
has
it
a
doesn't
very
represent my
capitalistic
model,
base.
as I just explained.
I understand. I understand why you don't want to talk about it, but it's a very capitalistic base, but it has all of the social program. I'm sorry, it's my wife, guys. I apologize.
Come on, Grid Motorsports.
Absolutely unprofessional. Give me 1 second.
It's called silence. I mean,
that's
just
fine.
turn your ringer off.
That's fine.
I'm in the middle of my debate.
Well,
I will say happy wife, happy life. And this is the perfect time for me to come in here. As soon as he's back from the call, we're going to let the judges get in here for a couple.
And then we'll do anything except for talk about Norway. God damn it! That's what I just learned.
Well, we'll find out if that trend continues. But yeah, we'll let Grid get back in here, and then we'll have go to the judges. Perfect. Well, that's perfect timing. It was perfect segue. So the judges are going to ask a couple questions here, and then we'll go to back to open debate again. We'll start with Charlie this time. Go ahead.
Motorsports, could you provide an example of a service that was formerly state funded that became privatized and improved? And by improved, I mean it serviced, the same amount of people or more on an equal basis. It was more efficient and more cost effective. Do you have an example?
Yeah, Excel Energy, Duck River Electric, Con Ed Water, Winchester Water and Sewer. Yeah, I mean, lots. Pick one.
Okay, let's talk about water and sewage. Winchester?
Yeah. Yeah, I pay them I don't know, $40 a month.
Okay. And were you living there when it was privatized?
It is currently privatized.
Or state owned. And state funded.
So it's a really good thing because on the other side of that, I'm on the side that has the Duck River Electric and Winchester public service, which is not public, but they call it that. And then on the other side of it, they have the Tennessee, whatever it is. I pay less than my neighbor that's literally 500 yards away from me. because
Okay.
he's not on the system now. They're trying to get annexed so that they're on the system, but they're not going to. I mean, there's tax dollars at work there, so it doesn't happen. It's very unlikely to happen.
I see. But were you ever under the state-funded water and
I
sewage?
try not to buy houses where there's a state funded if I can avoid it.
Okay. So it very rare that you've received state-funded services like water.
Yeah, I think it was
electric,
like,
et
I
cetera.
mean, honestly, it was probably in California was last time, but maybe in Denver was probably Denver Water, I guess. I don't know. I don't remember.
Okay. I was just asking because it does seem like many of your examples are
Yeah,
fairly
they're anecdotal for sure.
So
Yeah,
I was just wondering if there was like a direct comparison. All right, that's all I have.
Trouble. What you got?
All right. Well, I'm sort of in the same vein. I wanted to have Econoboi and Grid as well, but Econoboi brought up that like 90% of students attend public school stat. So I wanted to ask him to elaborate on that. I've been under the impression that private schools perform better than public schools. So this seems like a good example. And I want you to elaborate on sort of how this, because we're talking about sort of the socialist version and capitalist versions of things. It feels like public schools and private schools are both in a market competing, and public schools are like a free version. Can you just elaborate on the performance of private versus public schools and sort of like how both of them existing leans in either system's direction?
Yeah, sure. I mean, when it comes to comparing private and public schools, it's going to very much just depend on what sample that you're looking at. I mean, there's bad private schools and there's bad public schools, right? So generally speaking, which performs better, that's a very difficult question to ask because there's just a lot of variables that go into that kind of thing. What we have to keep in mind is the key difference between a private and a public school is basically just who controls it. Is it the local community through democratic elections, or is it private investors or some sort of private for-profit or a private nonprofit for-profit organization conglomerate that controls it, right? And what we see across all of these societies, we used to have almost no public schools. Now we have a whole lot of public schools. Every society seems to make the choice to have the overwhelming majority of their education be delivered through the public dole. I'll give you an example as to why that is. And not just through the public dole, but also without necessarily a lot of market competition. I'll take Sweden as an example. Sweden had these conservatives come into office, and they didn't necessarily you could say like they didn't like privatize their schools. A lot of their schools were still publicly owned. A lot of them became private. But what they did was institute a very radical voucher system, right? Where, you take this money and you go to the school that you want. And in theory, this level of competition, sort of capitalist competition, would improve school outcomes. But that's not at all what they saw in Sweden, right? What they saw was performance would get worse amongst students. They saw a huge amount of grade inflation, right? Because all of a sudden now parents want to send their kids not to the school that's necessarily the best at educating them, but what they see is the highest grades that their kids are receiving that they're then going to go to university with. So it's just the case that in a lot of markets and in a lot of aspects of our society, private capitalist ownership is just not the best thing to do. I mean, healthcare is another great example where because of our private sort of like distributed healthcare system in our society, we end up having a much less efficient, much more costly system than many other countries because we pay so much in administrative fees, right? You have to figure out what insurance you have, what it covers, all this stuff. That complication has a huge cost, both in terms of literal costs that you're paying, but also in terms of efficiency of the service. And it's no coincidence that countries that have public health insurance systems, those people overwhelmingly approve of their health insurance system, and they don't exactly want to privatize it.
So,
All right.
he asked me to.
Yeah, go ahead.
He asked me to.
Yeah, you're fine.
So it's an interesting thing because in my area, and you can look this up if you choose to. I'll give you my hometown, no problem. We have more private schools than ever. We have instituted a voucher system, and it is used. It's not a great voucher system, to be honest with you. It doesn't give you enough for a full year of school, but it does knock the cost down quite a bit. The competition is so great between public and private schools that we have instituted what are called magnet schools, where kids can test in, and it basically gives you a private school education on a state at a state school. or a city school. And right now, it's insane here how many. There's probably going to be another 2 private schools open within the next couple of years. Both of the private schools within blocks of me have gotten massively bigger. One of them has a huge construction project right now to add capacity. So I don't think that your rhetoric holds up in reality. I think that more and more people are looking to private school and homeschool because public school sucks, and the grades have gone down. We have people that can't even read above a 3rd grade level in this country that graduate high school from public schools that would never make it out of a private school. So I think it's very interesting that we talk about that, and I'm willing to. I will give you my hometown and let you see how many private schools are in the town, because it's crazy. It's nuts. And I'm not even in a wealthy area. I'm in a semi-rural area.
All right. Do either of y'all judges have any other questions? All right. Perfect. Then we will open it back up, and y'all can fight amongst yourselves again.
Where do we leave off?
Well, whatever you just said last would be where we left off.
Good question.
Well, actually,
I don't
he
know. We
had
were
asked
talking
me.
about collective ownership, obviously.
Oh, I was talking about China, and he pushed me.
Yeah, China. Go ahead.
Yeah, he pushed me towards Norway.
Go
I think China's an interesting thing, and I find it always interesting that people who push socialism, never want to talk about China. Which obviously, why would you? All the human rights violations.
China's not democratic, GM. This is not a dunk. Okay, China's a different
it's not.
country.
Look,
I find it ironic that capitalists never want to talk about fucking Pinochet's government, where he killed a whole shitload of people for political.
I don't have a problem. I don't have a problem.
What's wrong with that? Do you defend that? The authoritarian.
I'm not asking you to
killing that
defend
Pinochet did?
China. I'm asking you. It's
I'm
always
simply
interesting to
shocked.
me that we talk about socialism, and now we're talking about democratic socialism, and yet China, which in theory has elections and is democratic, and they even actually, they do all of these different things. Nobody ever wants to talk about it. You always want to talk about Norway. Well, let's talk about Norway. Norway claims they're not socialist. I'm sorry.
Yeah, sure. Go on. I'm listening.
Did you not want to talk about Norway?
No,
go
let's
ahead.
do
Go
it.
ahead. Continue. Go ahead.
You did ask me about Norway, right?
Hey, focus up. Go ahead.
All right. I'm sorry. Look, Norway doesn't even claim they're socialist, right? Like I don't know exactly if they're whatever monarchy thing or weirdness that they have going on there. But Norway succeeds because, and I hope you can agree, they have a massive amount of oil wealth to fall back on and to subsidize their entire economy. Can you agree with that?
That Norway benefits from its oil industry. I certainly agree with that.
That's not exactly what I said. The only reason that
the U.S. has a massive
oil
and gas industry.
You can't have a Swedish, Norway, whatever style economy on a Venezuela economy, right? I mean, they're kind of the same, but not the same. But you always want to talk. But you guys always want to talk about Norway. Well, they have the highest tax burden, I think, in the world, right? Is that correct?
Taxes aren't socialism, GM. We already covered this.
Okay, hold on. But is it not how these things are paid for? Are you deflecting from that? Are you denying that?
I'm not deflecting from that. Do you want me to talk to you about how Norwegian socialism emerged and like what were the mechanisms by which it started?
No, I honestly don't care about Norway. You brought up Norway. I'm responding and asking you questions.
Well, let me talk about it. So, okay, you say a couple things. We see a lot of people they talk about this when it comes to Norway. They say Norway is only successful because of it's got all the oil, right? Well, let's look at the other Nordic countries that don't necessarily have that huge stockpile of oil. Let's look at Denmark. Let's look at Sweden. Let's look at Finland. They have a huge amount of public ownership still. About 25% of GDP is the value of all of the public ownership in Finland, Norway, and in Finland, Denmark, and in Sweden. If you look at the value of the public ownership in the United States, it's actually negative because the United States has a huge amount of liabilities and they haven't really developed a lot of public assets, unlike those other countries. So it's a complete farce that people say that
hold on.
You can't have this.
Back up a second. I got it.
Back up. Let's do it.
Let's back up. Public assets are what help their GDP. Help me out with that.
So that's not what I said. So you're making the claim, and some people make the claim that the only reason Norway can have all of this collective ownership is because of its oil wealth. So I used basically an analogous several countries, Denmark, Sweden, and Finland, the same region, very similar culture. They don't have all of that oil wealth, and they have a huge amount of public ownership as well. And so it's important to keep that in mind when we're talking about these things. Oil is not the reason why private shareholders don't own as many things in those countries as in America. It is simply an institutional choice that they have made.
But that's not where you left off. What you said was that the Swedish, for example, I'm trying to remember back because it was so glaring. I was like, what the hell? That their GDP is 25%, and somehow that equates to better social.
Okay, so I'll explain
run that back
slowly.
through me,
Okay,
because I think you said a bunch of things, but I'm not really sure.
So it's okay. Some of these things are hard to understand. So let's just we got Sweden, right? They have a GDP. A GDP is the value of all the things that get produced in an economy. It is a flow, to be fair. Now, you also have a bunch of public assets in these countries. So assets that are owned collectively, right? These might be state-owned enterprises. They might be things like government services, whatever, right? Public transit systems, right? A whole lot of public assets that are owned collectively. That's a stock of wealth in the country. Well, if we were to take the value of those public assets and compare them relative to the size of the economy, we would see that that ratio is about 25% in Norway and Sweden and Finland. Now, obviously in Finland, Sweden, and Denmark. Now, obviously in Norway, they have more public ownership because they have a huge state-owned oil company. But let's look at a country and compare those institutions to a country like America. America has a lot of oil wealth. We could choose to make that a publicly owned, socialized institution. We simply choose not to. We choose instead to have the hundreds of billions of dollars, trillions of dollars of wealth of oil in this country to be privately owned.
Let me just jump in here real quick, because I would like y'all to come back to this a little bit, and both speak on this. Could y'all maybe elaborate on the correlation between the high taxes and are in like a socialist, or the lower taxes in a capitalist, and why one is good or bad? Because Grid mentioned it's higher taxes in the Netherlands, but then the argument would be, I guess, I'm not going to paraphrase, but it's going to be, you're going to get all these services because of these taxes, versus in the benefits of the lower tax society is you're going to have all these benefits from not paying the taxes. Could y'all elaborate on this correlation?
Before we do that, I have to ask this public asset thing. Do you honestly think, now I'm sure that there's some weird ratio that you can come up with, but do you honestly think that Sweden has more public assets and public wealth than the United States of America?
So we're okay.
But that's what you said. Look, it was a direct question. It was a direct stop. It was a direct question. You made the statement that as a percentage of GDP, they have, they have all this
percentage,
and as a percentage of that GDP, they have this high value asset thing, which that's interesting.
As a percentage, GM, not in absolute terms.
Explain
Obviously,
to me why that
is
matters.
a bigger country.
This is the kind of nonsense,
because we're talking about institutions. Okay, so the reason why it matters, for God's sake,
I gotta understand why it matters, because it doesn't matter.
Okay, so if we were to talk about how to build out institutions in this country, for instance, right, in America, if we had a public health system, our public health system would have to serve a lot more people, right? There's more people in this country than many other countries that have public health systems. That doesn't mean that from an institutional perspective, we can't copy those institutions over to this country. For instance, let's take oil as an example, okay? If the United States wanted to have a publicly owned oil company, all that it would take would be either raising capital or raising taxes. Somehow you'd have to get the money to do it, to buy out the stock of, let's say, Exxon. Exxon's worth, I don't know, $100 billion. You say, hey, I'm going to buy this stock for $60 billion, take over the company. Now I own most of Exxon. I can control it, right? That's essentially what Norway did when it started its state-owned oil company. So from an institutional framework, there's no reason to think that, because these countries are bigger or smaller, we can't use a lot of those same institutions. We have public schools here, they have public schools there. We have public health insurance options here, they have the same thing there. We have a public military there, they have the same thing there. You can obviously have many of the same institutions.
Look, I understand the obfuscation. I just want to understand why you think that we as a country have less assets than or public
As a
public asset
percentage,
as a
GM.
percentage? Are you including?
reason-
hold on, stop. You're an idiot.
Well, you asked me the
I
reason.
have
and
to
now- now
look.
I can't answer.
You have to be doing some sort of selective math here because we
my
literally have the
socialist mind
largest
tricks here.
military in the world with billions of dollars worth of publicly owned assets. We have
Mhm.
multiple billions of dollars just in parks. This has got to be. Do
That's
people
great.
fall for this? Do people fall for this?
No, the reason. Okay, you have to. Okay, you've talked about in previous conversations how you're a businessman, right?
I am a
I'm sure
businessman.
you'd understand what a balance sheet is, right? Do you know what a balance sheet
Yeah.
is?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, so balance sheets should balance, right? You have assets and liabilities, but obviously
With-
sometimes they
with
don't.
luck.
When you look at, well, right. Well, obviously sometimes they don't, especially public balance sheets. So sometimes governments like Norway and Finland and Sweden that have actually run themselves very, very well, they have a lot more assets than the government has liabilities.
I
And so
like
in the
that.
case of the United
I
States,
like that.
the reason
Great.
so in the case of the United States,
right.
well, if I
Okay,
can just finish
now
my
we're
point,
getting
in
somewhere.
the case
Now-
of the United States,
Yeah, gotcha.
the reason why they have lower public assets as a percent of GDP is because the United States has a very low net public worth because it's not run very well. So I would
Okay,
say that, hey,
that's
if we
a
want to run
great
very well, we
point.
should run like socialist
Hold on.
That's
Norway.
a great point.
All
That's
right,
a
when you finish, we're going to go to the judges. Go ahead.
Yeah, that's a great point. So we talk about it being run better when it's public works, but we have on the last 10 years, $8 billion minimum have been missing, unaccounted for from the public education budget, from the Department of Education. You honestly think the government is running things well? Any CEO would be fired, and yet no one's been fired. Nobody's been sent to jail. The government is the worst entity for this. This is why your elected Democrat officials can never be proper businessmen and cannot do these things that you're talking about, at least in America. Now, I'll give you that maybe it can work in Norway or Sweden or wherever. I don't know. I don't live there, right? I don't know the people. I met a few Swedish people. They're okay. They're nice. They're fun. But I'm talking about here as a system. You just said that it would be better, and we have all of this waste here, but the waste is in the government side, not in the private sector. The private sector, we build assets every day. This is why your argument is dog water. Please, sir, walk me through it so that I can understand it, because I'm an idiot. Treat me like one. And please make sure that you use small words.
All right, I'll give it to you. Yo, I'll let you go rebut this real quick, and then we'll go to the judges since he's directly asking about it. Go ahead.
Okay, sure. Well, yeah, I mean, to James' point, when he talks about, oh, government is so inefficient and wasteful, we have to look at why that is. Now, of course, as any good CEO would know, as GM would obviously know, that the reason why you wouldn't necessarily do a lot of the things that conservatives do to government to make them run efficiently is because you don't always cut budgets and make them more efficient as a result. I actually wrote a paper on this called The Anti-Efficiency Agenda on Substack, where I go into this with a little bit more detail. So I use the example of, let's say a department is wildly inefficient, it's like the contracts department, and we go into that person's office and we find one person reviewing a bunch of paper contracts, right, by hand. Well, we wouldn't say, oh, let's cut her salary by 20% and expect the department to all of a sudden be more efficient. No, we actually have to invest in that department to make it more efficient, to make that worker a lot more productive. If we did the same thing, we saw a stack of papers piled high to the ceiling, we wouldn't necessarily say make that person part-time instead of full-time and expect it to be more efficient. We might just need to hire more people. What these other countries do that is more efficient is not just have a lot less people. What they have is high state capacity. They invest in the productivity of their government workers, and they have an adequate number of government workers. And when it comes to the state-owned enterprises, they set those up in the state services as well. They set those up in such a way that are very democratically transparent, that are very democratically accountable, and you do absolutely have turnover in these programs. Do not confuse poorly operated public assets in America for what is the cap of and the height of what's possible for the public to do with its public institutions. In fact, oftentimes it's the absolute lowest of what's possible in America. We just need to have better institutions. All the other countries, for the most part, have figured a lot of these things out. The Nordics just happen to be the best.
All right, perfect. We're going to go to the judges now, and then let's start with Pin Temple this time. If you have any questions, go ahead.
Not really a question, just another chance to elaborate, I guess. I wanted to have you elaborate on your preference for horizontal ownership and whether you would want that accomplished through incentives or having it be required. Because if you are requiring it, this sounds like limiting potential of Americans, which I would have constitutional questions about. And then as a secondary part of that, I guess, is this socialist style system worth it if everyone is able to survive but no wealth can be built? Like if you cap everyone's potential but everyone can have healthcare and an apartment and basic needs met, is that where you see us as like the optimal society? So those two pieces.
Yeah, sure. I guess I'll address the first part, kind of a philosophical question. So I'm not a degrowther, right? So I do think that it's important to, however you design institutions, to design them in such a way that encourages innovation and encourages growth. So I said that in my opening statement, and certainly I would say that now. Now, when it comes to how mechanically these things would happen, I take a pluralist approach, right? So some things would become government services. For instance, the health insurance industry, I would say do a single payer system. That would just be a collectively provided public service. Now, when it comes to other things, like when we talk about all these different companies that are operating, I would suggest doing something like Norway does, but not just like Norway, like Alaska does as well. Having a big sovereign wealth fund. Obviously, we've talked about this before, but Temple. The way that sovereign wealth funds work is you have a public investment firm. So think of the giant, Vanguard, for instance, right? They go out and they buy a bunch of public assets and they just manage them for private investors. Imagine the exact same institutional framework, but it's just publicly owned and publicly managed. The government goes out and buys stocks on the open market. Oh, Exxon shareholders are selling whatever, 1 billion shares of their company or whatever it is. The government just buys those on the open market. There's no expropriation here. There's no forced transaction. It just happens to be the case that over time, as capital accumulates into the fund, that the public ends up owning a larger share of public assets. The last thing I'll say is I wrote another article on this called "There's an Obvious Solution to Wealth Inequality," where I talk about the inequality effects of Norway's sovereign wealth fund. And what it shows is that if you look at the private wealth distribution of Norway, they have a private wealth distribution similar to America, where basically the bottom 50% own almost nothing and the top 50% own almost everything. But once you take into account their public ownership, especially through their sovereign wealth fund, the bottom 50% actually own about a third of national wealth. The top 1% go from owning 20% of private wealth to only owning about 8%, right? And so that's all with voluntary transactions and voluntary distribution. The Norwegian government just manages their public assets that efficiently, and that's the direction that I think that we would want to go in.
All right. Did that answer your question, Patel? Do you have another one?
No, that was good.
Charlie.
Motorsports, just because I do think that you made a few points, but I feel like it got lost in kind of the greater conversation. Could you summarize why you think the U.S. could not have similar social institutions to Norway and run as well? Like, what makes America different?
Well, first of all, we're not a homogenous society. We're too spread out. We're massive. Second, our government has proven time and time again to be the most efficient thing on the planet. All you have to do is simply look at the repeated shortcomings in just missing cash, things that are bought supposedly using government funds that never show up. All of these things, the government is, and literally there's no one in America that believes the government is the best option for anything. And you would have to radically change the mentality of every human being in the nation. And you couldn't do that. So while it's a great thing to talk about, by the way, I really want to understand something about this, that public asset thing, but we'll get to that in a minute. The average American does not trust the government, and they never will. And that is as plain as simple as I can make it.
Okay.
I have one more question.
So
Oh,
change.
go ahead.
So a change wouldn't be possible. Like, we wouldn't be able to change how our government is run.
It would be, maybe over 50 or 100 years, maybe, but probably not.
Okay.
Again, we keep seeing things like the Department of Education example that I gave that was not answered. How is it that you want to trust democratically elected people in a socialist system, in a socialist network, such as the Department of Education, who can't account for $8 billion at minimum every year for the last 10 years. How can you, even with a straight face, say that that is something that works in the United States of America? Taxpayers are mad about it. I'm angry about it. I can't get enough of trying to figure out how our government can be so messed up. And the fact that anyone thinks that more of the same is going to fix it is insanity, and it's absurd. And literally, you're going to have to use small words to convince me of this, because it's dog water. It's a dog water argument, and it's absolute garbage.
All right.
I
Did
have
you
one more follow-up?
go ahead, Pit Devil? Yeah.
Last follow-up. Sort of to just have Econoboi, I guess, wrap this up. It just spurred the thought there, but why wouldn't the government healthcare system that you want be like the VA, which is notoriously unpopular?
Dude, that's my question,
I
bro.
agree.
Well, I wanted to. I guess I just thought, like,
Yeah,
what is the answer to that for,
Well, yeah, I mean, I actually disagree. I actually disagree with your characterization of even the VA. I have many veterans in my family. I wasn't able to serve myself, but to the extent that I've talked to them anecdotally, they seem to say, look, similar to what people in the UK say about their decommodified health service. They say, look, obviously it's got problems, but damn, I really appreciate, generally speaking, the service that the VA provides. I mean, if you look at polls amongst veterans, they say largely the same thing. Aggregately, I think the VA has about an 85-90% trust rate amongst veterans, which I take to be pretty high. I mean, it seems like they generally appreciate the service. To the extent that the VA has its problems, I would not disagree with any of those particular problems that show up, but it appears that veterans are quite clear in saying they don't want to have private health coverage. They do appreciate having the VA as a benefit. Seniors who are on Medicare say the same thing. That has like a 70 or 80% approval rating. People who are on Medicaid say the same thing. They say substantially, look, I agree, it's not perfect, it has its problems, but I really, really do appreciate having this service, and I don't want to be thrown to the wolves of the private market. And every single other country, Canada, the UK, Taiwan, all these other countries that have socialized their healthcare systems, the parties that advocate for privatization are irrelevant in their elections. Nobody advocates for having a privately owned, capitalist-owned and run healthcare system, because it just doesn't seem to work and produce satisfaction amongst the population.
So you wouldn't challenge that it is going to work like the VA. You just think the VA is not necessarily unpopular, but you do accept,
Yeah,
like, it wouldn't be a misrepresentation to say that the VA is how it would work by your understanding.
My
So like, we
personal
debate
preference-
whether people like that or not, but that it would work like the VA.
My personal preference in an ideal system would be to have something like a well-funded NHS. But obviously, look, Canada has a single-payer system. France has managed competition. In the Netherlands, they have totally privately owned insurance, but it's obviously highly, highly government regulated. I mean, so there's a lot of different ways to skin this cat on universal healthcare. I happen to think that the socialized versions are better, but what's certainly not the best way to do things is private, free market, capitalist-owned health insurance industry. You're either going to need a whole mess of regulation, or I think more simply, you're going to need public ownership.
All right. Charlie, did you have any other questions?
Not without inevitably jumping in some capacity.
That's fine. Okay. I mean, you can say something if you like.
I lived in the UK, and the NHS was really good. It rocked. I love the NHS. Great.
Yeah.
That's all I gotta say.
It's interesting. I have a large British contingent, and it's very different from here. I'll say, like, I didn't realize that they don't have like over the counter drugs like we do. Like when Modi was here, Modi, we would go to the store and he'd be like, "Oh, my stomach hurts." Like, "Oh, this is whatever. You have to get a prescription for this." But it's kind of like, I don't know. I thought that kind of interesting that like it's extremely different from here. I feel like the point you can't even get stuff at the store, you just go down to whatever. But I don't know. It's just stuff. All right, so here we're gonna go to the last open debate. Y'all can debate with each other about that, about everything that we discussed. Here in about, I'm gonna give you all about 6 minutes total. Between the two of y'all, and then we're gonna go to closings. Grid, you open, so you'll go last.
Sure.
But we'll go ahead and open it up. A fight.
All right. was going to take issue with the VA, with the representation of the VA, because actually, literally every vet I know right now is either using private health since they've gotten vouchers or whatever to use private healthcare. They're all using private healthcare. They don't want to go to the VA. Now our VA is actually pretty good here, but it still lacks a lot to be desired, especially for mental illness. But again, whatever. I'll just say that I've heard the exact opposite of what you said. So we'll take those two anecdotes and throw them out the window. But talking about the Norway healthcare system, it is notoriously slow, especially for like regular, like non-emergency things, right? Is that true?
I'm not an expert on the. Yeah, go on.
The Norway system that you said was so great is notoriously slow and basically massive wait times for non-emergency procedures, much like as you see in Canada and other places. Is that true or not?
Yeah, so when we're talking about different healthcare systems, so I didn't say that
It's
the
a
Norwegian
simple yes or
healthcare system
no.
was
Is
great.
it true or not?
Well, no, but you're putting words in my mouth. Okay,
Okay.
we literally have not mentioned the Norwegian healthcare system in this entire discussion. Now, if we're going to talk specifically
I'm
about
getting
Norway
really used
again,
to
I
you
would
not
say,
answering my question, so it's cool. Just keep
well,
going.
I mean, I'll leave it to the judges to determine whether or not I've answered any of your questions, but I think I'm answering pretty directly. When it comes to Norway specifically, Norwegians again have a very similar experience with their healthcare system as every other country that has socialized medicine has. Norwegians will say there are some problems. Politicians will run on plugging some of those holes. Oh, we need to do this, we need to do that, and how we organize our healthcare system. What they don't run on, what substantially nobody in Norway advocates for, is privatizing and making for profit their healthcare system. Okay. Now,
Is there a
I
way they
think,
could
to
do
me
that?
at least, of course, there's a way they could do that.
How would they do
Why
that?
wouldn't there be?
How would they do that?
They would say, hey, private investors, we have a whole bunch of healthcare assets that we're trying to
Hmm.
privatize. Come and buy them up.
But the
That's how
healthcare is run by
privatizations
the
historically
state.
work.
So would the state allow a private individual to open? So if I wanted to open a dental office in Norway, could I do that?
You're making two different claims here. So mechanically, it's possible for Norway to put in private hands the healthcare system. They choose not to. Now, with regards to what their regulations are today about offering healthcare, I don't know to what. There's obviously private options
That's
in
really not.
Norway. It's
Now
not an entirely socialized thing.
let's roll this back a little bit.
All right,
You
roll it back.
said that they don't want privatized healthcare. I
It seems that way.
assume I have to assume that you're right. I don't know. I haven't researched this. You have. I haven't. So let's just assume that you're right. And then you said that they would vote. But then I said, well, could it happen? Well, you said, well, sure. Well, okay. Well, how would that happen? You've researched this. I haven't. Could I open a dental office in or a chiropractic office or something like that? Could I? I mean, I invest in healthcare. Could I make that investment in Norway?
Yeah,
Or
I
would the
don't.
state shut me
mean,
down?
every country regulates chiropractic and dental care differently. I mean, again, I assume that they have private and public options for. I mean, chiropractic care might be a little bit more controversial. I'm not sure, but that's a whole different statement from saying whether or not you could do it. Obviously, what it would take would be the people giving you consent to do it. They've chosen to run their healthcare system in a specific way. I mean, I know there's private options in almost every country, even in the UK, where they have essentially state-run health services. But I don't know how that's
But
relevant
there's
to whether
no
or not
interest in the
private options are
state.
better than public options.
There's no interest for the state to let that happen.
Well, there, of course, would be interest because Norway is not an autocratic country. If Norway had a terribly publicly managed health system to the extent that people in that country wanted to vote to privatize it, they could. The point that I made was that a lot of people say, catastrophizing things about these countries. Oh, my goodness.
90%?
Oh, my goodness.
90%?
I don't know what you mean. A lot of people
You
say,
said a
oh,
lot of
my
people.
goodness,
I asked for
so
a
bad.
percentage.
Okay, so you started this conversation by saying, hey, in my neighborhood, it seems like people really just fucking love private options. And so
Sure.
what I'm saying is, hey, if you look at the polling on these
Mhm.
issues and you look at how people actually decide to manage their country's healthcare system, or in our country, decide to manage the VA or other public options that we have, it seems like people, when you look at the polling, actually fucking love these public systems. They don't necessarily want to completely privatize them because public systems work
Okay,
pretty
that's a
well.
wonderful point. I'm glad you
All
said
right.
that, because in America, we don't want that. We continuously vote it down. We don't, as a matter of fact, we're trying to take as many things private as possible. So
We don't want
what's your
that. Half of people in this country get their health insurance from either Medicaid or Medicare. Guess what that is?
because it's their
Socialized
only option,
medicine,
though,
brother. What
right?
are you
It's their
talking
only
about?
option because
It's clearly
it's
not
paid
their
for
only
tax.
option. They could have private. Every single elderly person could go out and get private insurance if they want. Why do they choose not to?
I have no idea. It's probably cheaper, I would
Because
guess.
it's more expensive and it's
I don't
not
know.
as good coverage. Like, that's probably why. I mean, I think that
I don't know.
everybody who's on Medicaid.
I pay for
Wait,
other
everybody
people's
who's on
healthcare.
everyone who's on Medicaid could go get private insurance. Why don't they do that?
Maybe they should.
But
I don't know. I can't speak
Because
to
they're
what
too
other people
poor
do.
to. They
What are you
need
doing,
Medicaid.
Kentucky?
Right. You say everyone who's on the VA uses private insurance, but again, that's
I
not
didn't
true
say
in the data.
everyone.
And
I said the people that you said the people that you know and interact with.
I didn't say
By
that. I
large,
cited data.
did you?
I did.
got
Look
about
at Gallup.
30
Look
seconds
at
to
the
finish up.
polls.
What data?
The polls of veterans seem to show that, hey, guess what? I really appreciate having Medicare, or I really appreciate having the VA. I really trust the
What
VA as a
percentage?
system. It's 85 to 90%.
Really? Okay. I'll have to look that up.
That's
I
right.
don't know that I believe that, but I'll look it up.
Look it up.
I will.
All
I
right.
promise.
There's a link in chat if you would
Yeah.
like one.
I
I'll post it in the Discord.
don't have that up.
Oh, she already did.
Oh yeah, there it is.
All right, well, that's perfect timing. Perfect timing. You can read that. We're going to go into closings. Go ahead. You got 3 minutes, Econoboi. Let me just pull up my timer. I'll give you 1 second here. And then judges, after their closings, send me in a DM who won. And then we're going to come to y'all for critiques at the end. Go ahead. Now, also, chat, y'all have 5 minutes to vote. Afterwards, if anybody else's chat, you have to vote in my room to do it. So go ahead, starting now.
Yeah, guys, I mean, thanks for the debate. It was really fun having me here. And of course, it's fun debating everybody. I think that what we heard here was what you hear out of a lot of socialism and capitalism debates. It's not very nuanced. There's not a lot of evidence against the kind of, let's say, informed socialist framework, right? Oh, I want to talk about China. Well, guess what? I'm not recommending the Chinese economic model, for God's sakes. I'm advocating for many different things than what China has, right? No form of capitalism is the same country by country, and I wouldn't say certainly the one form of socialism is the same country by country. Let's just take a step back and look at the big picture here. I think that even in America, a lot of the what I would call socialist institutions prove to be, for the most part, pretty quality, right? Again, public schools have their problems, but it's good that every kid, despite how rich or poor they are, has an option to go to a public school. And there's a reason that even 85% of rich people send their kids to public school. It's a pretty good service, right? It's a pretty good service. Same thing with things like the Medicare system and the VA system and the Medicaid system. They have their problems. I would say to the extent that they have their problems, it's because of conservative governments basically gutting those programs. But most people who are on those systems overwhelmingly approve of them. I mean, we linked a poll in chat here that says that 90% of veterans, generally speaking, trust the VA to deliver healthcare services that they need. Now, that's not 100%, but obviously there's not 100% approval of people's private insurance either, right? So, we have to keep that in mind and internalize that in our analysis as well. People appreciate things like the fire department and the police service, generally speaking, right? They have their problems, but again, people wouldn't necessarily advocate for privately owning and market distributing things like security services or firefighting or military services, or for the most part, things like healthcare or public education in this country. My argument fundamentally is that when we look at the best examples of public ownership in the world, things like Norway, Finland, Sweden, to some extent, places like Singapore, Canada, places like that, I think those are good models to emulate. What does that mean? It means expanding our healthcare services to cover many, many more people. It means investing in public assets to distribute profits horizontally. That means having things like a publicly owned oil company and gas company and publicly owned infrastructure companies. Many other countries have gone in this direction. Look at the UK in this last election. They decided to capitalize a state-owned enterprise to invest in green energy. That might not necessarily be your thing, but the state obviously has the capacity to do this. I think that we should move in that direction because we believe in equality. We believe in a sort of no problem, Gibbs. We believe in a sort of democratization of economic production, and generally speaking, we believe that the outcomes of these things are positive, and certainly they're a lot better than only allowing private investors to do substantially the same exact thing that we could do as a community at large. That's what I advocate for.
Oh, fantastic. Also, yeah, I mean, I always just try to like mouth it and be quiet so that way y'all don't have to acknowledge it and you'll just like us know that how much time y'all have. But now y'all know. Grid, go ahead whenever you're ready. Starting now. Thank you so much. As soon as Grid's done, the polling will go live, chat. So go ahead, Grid. Now you got 3 minutes.
All right. I wanted to thank my opponent for giving me the best vision of obfuscation and irrelevance that I've ever seen in my entire life. It was wonderful. First of all, his VA study, 91% are approving of outpatient care. That means they don't have to go there, and it's probably not necessary. It's not that what he said it was. And I hate to be a nitpicker, but you're the one that brought it up and you sent me the information. I also took just a 2-second search of Norway, and they have such a problem with unemployment that up to 80% of low-income workers will not return to work after a furlough of any kind because of the massive taxes, which they gain nothing by working. And this is what socialism always devolves to. It always dissolves to the few taking care of the many, and we can't. And America doesn't function that way. We're close enough to that as it is, and we need to get. And we're trying to move further away from it, not closer to it. And I think that literally illustrates. He's illustrated every single thing that's wrong with it. The Department of Education is a shambles. Public education sucks. People literally read at a 3rd grade level, graduating high school, and that's a majority of people, not the minority. And the minority that prove the rule are the people who actually graduate and go to like Stanford and shit, which I didn't. I just can't get enough of the socialist argument and how they always want to talk about this nirvana state of how the government and the democratic process eliminates all of this nonsense of private industry. Well, private industry only exists to succeed, and when it fails, it is punished. It is built upon a podium of excellence and not mediocrity, which is exactly what socialism always is: mediocrity. There's no room for excellence in socialism at all, period. And it can't exist without capitalism in the first place. So capitalism wins. Socialism, sorry, takes another L. I apologize for being kind of, maybe not being my normal self, because to be honest with you, I just didn't want to. I actually had in mind a different debate, but that's okay. I think I did okay. I don't know, maybe not. It's okay if I lose, but socialism is always an L every single time.
Can I ask one question, clarifying question?
Absolutely.
Motorsports.
Yeah.
Can you define what you think outpatient care is?
Outpatient care is when you go in and you leave the same day. That's outpatient.
Okay, just double checking. Just double checking.
Have you never gone to a hospital before?
No, I know what outpatient
Okay.
care is. I was just making sure that you did.
Well,
all right. Well, that's fine. Judges, send me who y'all think won, and then we can discuss chat. The poll is live. I will say this. I want to get this in before y'all go off the off-patient pair discussion. I have never had to be a harder time being impartial as a moderator before than this, and it wasn't because of the substance of the debate. It was because y'all started talking about something that would affect my money, and that was the deregulation of electricity. And I was like, "Oh shit!" Now we're gonna talk about. I make a lot of money because of the deregulation of electricity, because I own a B2B sales thing. We're basically giant middleman, and we middleman for a bunch of these electric companies in different cities. So I was just like, "Oh, let's talk about it." Now, it's interesting that you said rates go higher. I feel like that may be true. I haven't really looked at the numbers, but what's interesting is this is kind of like in a lot of the industries I'm in, there are very predatory people, like extremely predatory, like credit card processing, right? However, if you're just like a decent businessman, right? And I'll give you an example. There's like Square and Clover and all them. They have a solid business model that's fair, right? But if you're just like a decent guy and you go in there and give them fair rates, you're gonna be undercutting your like competition by like almost 300 to 500% sometimes. And so it has the bad outcomes if people don't do the research, right? If you do the research and find someone, you can find people like me that are way lower and like they're just making money hand over fist, even though you're like giving them fantastic deals, kind of thing. It's just, I don't know. I found that interesting. I was like, oh no!
I saw your face when I said electric company, and I was
like, oh god. Yeah, I was like, oh no, they're coming for me now.
I mean,
No,
think
I
the
support
strongest
you, Brand.
argument
I
against,
support you. I pay less electricity because of private electricity.
Go ahead. What were you saying? Econoboi?
No. I mean, I think the strongest argument against any kind of socialist or anybody who I guess advocates for a kind of fundamentally different form of production or anything like that is just like institutionally it can be kind of hard to imagine, right? That my goodness, is a country like America really prepared to do something like you're talking about? Efficiently or equitably, things like that. And I think that's a very reasonable concern, right? I wouldn't want to vote for just anything that collectivizes anything, right? I mean, obviously, the model that you're using and how you're designing these institutions really does matter. But that's a practical conversation. It just seems like, sort of technically speaking, we certainly have the institutional knowledge, the sort of ethos is available to us to do these things very, very well and efficiently if we choose to.
All right, yeah. Temple, you wanted to say something there at the end. I saw that you grimacing right before we.
I had a question about something Econoboi said. I don't want to throw
You
it
can
out
ask
in
now.
overtime now.
I mean, you might as well. It's already.
So
have the
when you were
picks,
talking
so-
about like private insurance versus public insurance and like suggesting that public insurance was better, why would I accept my employer's private coverage if that was true?
Well, obviously, if you have an employer plan, you might not be eligible for all the different public plans available, right? So
Well,
for
assuming
Medicaid,
in some cases you are, and assuming like in those cases people generally opt for the employer's provided private, like wouldn't
Well,
that
generally-
suggest that it's a better coverage if that's the distinction we're making?
well, generally speaking, again, the coverage available to you from like truly public institutions is really not ever available to you if you're like a fully employed person, right? Because you're probably not poor enough to qualify for Medicaid. You have to be very poor to qualify for Medicaid. Obviously, we do have a lot of very poor people, but the overwhelming percentage of those
It's
people
50% is
aren't
retirees.
workers.
on
Right.
McCain.
Most of those people aren't workers, right? And then when we talk about Medicare, obviously you have to be old enough to qualify for it. And to be fair, when it comes to Medicare, I mean, I've seen many people who are still working past the age of 65 who they do decide to go on Medicare instead of their employer plan. That's not a very unusual thing at all. If you look at those people that actually are eligible for public insurance and their employer plan simultaneously. I mean, I worked with a veteran recently who he stayed using the VA instead of using his employer plan, right? So I mean,
Chat, it's very close. We got about 30 seconds or so left on the vote. Make sure you get your
I've had-
votes in.
I
experiences
didn't
with
go
both
over it in my
systems.
closing, but literally like literally everyone I know on Medicaid or Medicare are all retirees that are on such a small fixed income because of poor planning and retirement that they just can't do anything else. Like there's like they would absolutely do private insurance, but they just can't. They don't have any other choice.
All right, we got about 15 seconds or so. Almost done with the voting. And then we'll close it out here and get out of here. Thanks again for everybody for coming. I appreciate my wonderful judges for coming and taking their time off to judge. Anybody got any exciting things coming up that they want to promote?
I'm gonna go to sleep.
Fantastic.
Poker League, baby. Poker
poker.
League. baby.
Tired, man.
Come join the Poker League.
No.
All right. It looks like we have the chat vote in. It looks like Econoboi led the chat vote 6-4. So that's close. All right. Nobody can say my chat is now totally right leaning. That's fantastic. Good to hear. Moving on. Let's go start with our judges here. Who won and why? We'll start with Pentuple. Who does your vote for?
So Econoboi had way more volume in his debate. Seemed a little bit more prepped, but I did fundamentally disagree with a lot of the conclusions that he had. Grid was very low volume, but I agreed with a lot of the points he made. So it was really tight for me because obviously I agree with one side way more. But Econoboi, as far as debate style and prep, was better prepared to defend his position. But given it's so tight and given the tiebreaker metrics that MAGA headquarters has implemented, I gave my win to Grid.
Well,
All right. Thank you so much.
I appreciate the
So we got a
honesty.
1-1. Let's go to Charlie.
I'm going to have to say Econoboi won, specifically because his evidence was largely empirical, which is more convincing to me. Whereas I felt that Grid's it was very anecdotal, many of his examples, which is less convincing to me.
All right. Well, thank you so much. It looks like we have it. We got in our debuts. We got Econoboi with a win and Grid with a L. But don't worry, we're gonna have many more of these DCSs. Y'all are more than welcome to come back on these in the future and get some more competition going. We got rankings. The rankings will be updated later tonight as well. As we give some outros to people. Charlie, go ahead.
This was interesting. I feel like this kind of was a microcosm of frankly every conversation I've ever had with someone that has different political views. So it was fun to watch it play out. Hard not to jump in, but kind of nice to sit back. So I thought both contestants did well. So yeah, I had fun.
I want to also emphasize that to Econoboi. I thought you did a very, very good job. Just too many,
I got to be honest. I actually did not prep for this specific debate from Econoboi. I prepped for more of the way he went at the debate he had with Andrew Wilson. I didn't watch the debate with Fabian Liberty. Maybe if I had, I would have changed my study. But that was my fault. I watched the wrong stuff, and the prompt was so freaking broad that I was like, whatever, we'll figure it out. So
yeah, I mean,
he got me. I mean, I was like a lot of the stuff he was saying. Like I was like, I'm not really prepared to deal with that, but I'll do the best I can.
See, I'm a broadband myself.
You went like 4 for 5 in the field, and Econoboi went like 7 for 20. So for me, it's like the percentages are different, but there's a lot more volume and maybe more.
The interesting thing is that a lot of people would have just sat there and ChatGPT'd up some stuff, but I'll just sit here and swing. I don't care.
Yeah. Well, on that note, I mean, we'll go to Econoboi. You got an outro. You got to do anything coming up? Promote yourself. Tell people where to find you.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I did reference a couple articles that I wrote. So I've been writing articles on my Substack, econoboi.substack.com, for my writings, stuff like that. I mean, I think, I happen to find my writings pretty interesting. So if you thought any of this was interesting, go over to my Substack. I also have a podcast, Live and Learn, every Wednesday night at 6 p.m. It's streamed on my channel, Econoboi, Peace Goes Hour, Josiah from Pondering Politics, Hutch. His YouTube channel is kind of a joint stream that we do every Wednesday evening at 6 p.m. Central Time, that is. And I've got 3 wonks on YouTube. It's more policy, more dense podcast, and then my own YouTube channel, Econoboi. So if any of that stuff is interesting, subscribe to any of that stuff, and ask me any questions if you're interested in learning some stuff.
Fantastic. And we got your Substack link in the chat right now for those that want it. Grid, go ahead.
Yeah, it was fun. I had a great time. It was it's an interesting thing when you're just really like the discussion goes in a completely different direction. It was awesome. I had a lot of fun, actually. We'll have to do it again. It's gonna be fun. It's gonna be a good time.
Where can they find you?
An Unreasonable Man on Grid One, all right, on YouTube.
All right, fantastic. Pentuple.
Right, at Pentuple, we do mostly politics, MAGA headquarters. We also do poker and my men's league baseball games. So come hang out on Twitch.
All right. Well, thank you all so much. This brings us to the end. I appreciate all y'all for being here and being a part of this. And rankings will be posted later tonight and updated and whatnot. And we're looking for people to get to the 3 wins so we can start the regular season. So if y'all have call outs, call people out, folks. We need them. But all right. Well, thank y'all so much, guys. Bye,
See ya.
everybody.
Gotta hit the button. All right. Well, that was terrible, man. That was just terrible. I was prepared for a completely different argument. Weird. Very weird. So strange. I was actually Arctic Timberwolf. Yeah, we're not censoring you at all, bro. I don't censor anybody. I don't know what I don't know what's going on there. It's an interesting thing. I had really prepared for an argument or a discussion of, yeah, he did. I mean, he doesn't want to answer anything like that. Ghost 1978. He absolutely. And I brought it up 3 fucking times. He still didn't answer it. You know, the thing is that he literally just he didn't answer anything. He gave a bunch of made up shit, and that's terrible if they're censoring my channel. What were you? Hit me up on Discord and let me know what's up. That's pretty terrible if I'm getting censored. So that was an L, first one. Although, I mean, to be honest with you, there was no fucking way Enemy Charlie was going to vote for me. Well, every time I swung, I connected. That was the thing. Literally every time I swung, I connected. So yeah, I narrowly lost the chat vote, and then of course the commie voted with the commie. So yeah, it was something else. I fucked up, guys. I fucked up because I thought that he was going to take. I didn't think he was going to take the position that socialism is the means of owning production, and I thought that he was going to be like, well, I agree with some. I agree with some socialist policies, but blah blah blah. No, there's not. No, there's no. The chat was the tiebreaker. Yeah, but it. I just wasn't. I totally prepared for the wrong debate, and I didn't research the Norway model enough. He kept referencing it, but it literally is pretty terrible. What opposing opinion? Yeah. It was very weird how he I mean, he committed literally all of the fallacies. Gish Gallop, red herring. You know, he strawmanned my argument like 3 times. You know, he was obfuscating, like literally every answer was an obfuscation. Every answer. But what can you do? Yeah, look, that's on me, guys. I didn't prep well enough. I let you guys down. I'm sorry. It should have been a beat down. It was you know, it was a street fight, and I didn't pack enough lead in my gloves. So yeah, he was really like, he would so I would ask a clarifying question and he would treat me like I had like rebutted him or something, which was weird. So yeah, I don't believe, and you know, the poll was about outpatient care specifically, and it was 91% of a very narrow focus. I'll know better next time. It was bad because, you know, I should have beat him. I should have beat him so bad, but that's okay. Even not prepared. Give me 1 second, guys. All right. Yeah, it's yeah, it's fine. I didn't think I'd win the chat either. I figured that he had a bunch of people stacked in the chat. I should have had everybody go over and stack up in the chat over at Gibbs, but whatever. So it's okay. I know, Ghost. That was weird. You know what was weird is he kept saying stuff like, Yeah, let me. He just, yeah, I don't know. It was good. It was a good debate. He was better prepared than me. That's all there is to it. Um, you know, yeah. So what's weird is that most veterans I know are opting out of VA care and using private health care. But whatever. All right, guys, I got to go pick up my son from school. I let you down. I'm sorry. I owe you all. Next time, we'll get him. We'll get him next time. So, yeah. You guys have a great rest of your evening. I will be back tomorrow night. Yes, go watch Andrew debate the go watch Andrew debate a male feminist. I got to go pick my kid up. You guys are the best, no doubt. I will. I'll catch you guys later. I will. I'm going to review this, and because you know what, you guys just don't understand. I was like, I had everything laid out for an entirely different debate. Totally my fucking fault. Because I didn't think he was going to go full socialist, full communist, and it is what it is. All right, ladies and gentlemen, get out of here. Go away. Leave me alone. Be cool. Wear glasses if you need them. Stay off my lawn.